I think it's recording now. So, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are and when you will be watching this video. I'm very happy to see you all today for our first in this year student and early career committee seminar series. I'm planning this year to have this series on a more or less regular monthly basis. Sometimes we will have maybe more than one event per month, sometimes one event per month, depending on our availability and availability of our speakers. As we all know, these events are sponsored by Division 48, Peace Psychology, and I'm really grateful for my colleagues for allowing us this time and space to present work of our colleagues who are either peace psychologists or working in the neighboring disciplines and helping us hear some new insights from in the area. Also, I would like to thank ABRIR, Consortium of Psychological Researchers from the Global South, for helping us organize it and always helping us find new voices, underrepresented voices who need to be heard. So today I'm very, very grateful for Dr. Nena Mocnik Papavero for joining us. She is a researcher, Marie Curie researcher, currently living between Paris and Barcelona, but mostly in Paris. She got her PhD from the University of Ljubljana in Slovenia. She is also the author of two monographs, Trauma Transmission and Sexual Violence, Reconciliation and Peace Building in Post-Conflict Settings, published by Routledge in 2021, and Sexuality After War Rape, From Narrative to Embodied Research, published in 2017. So her research interest covers collective traumas, identity-based violence, and non-medical trauma rehabilitation. As I said, it's an honor to have you today. We are going to talk about vicarious trauma and secondary trauma related to fieldwork done in post-war settings, mostly war settings, conflict settings, and how that can influence a researcher who either comes from that area or is basically coming from some peaceful setting but is exposed to the traumatic narratives coming from participants. So this is a really hard topic, I could say. I can tell also from my perspective because somehow I was also part of this volume that we will be talking about today, which is titled The Cost of Bearing Witness, Secondary Trauma and Self-Care in Field-based Social Research. We will say that we will be discussing a little bit of chapters of researchers who actually experienced vicarious trauma while doing their fieldwork. Some of them actually talked more about their experiences. Some of them actually talked about both their experiences, but also about some sort of resilience methods that they use to help themselves recover. So I won't be talking anymore. Actually, I will be talking, but with Nena mostly. But I would like Nena to tell us more about this book, how it started, how she came up with this idea, and a little bit about her experiences of doing peace research work in Bosnia and Herzegovina mostly. So, Nena, the floor is yours now.
Okay, thanks a lot, Alma, for this introduction, and thanks everyone for joining us. As Alma said, I guess we are from very different time zones, so good morning for those who are in the West, and good evening for you, Alma, I guess. I would like to say a couple of words, yes, about the book that was just published, and basically it's not. It's a book that was published on the basis of the special issue that we did in 2020. And with the other editor, who is unfortunately not here with us today, we got an invitation from Routledge for the book to be republished, because it was, not surprisingly, I would say, a very successful edition that was downloaded quite a lot. And this tells us basically about the increasing need, I would say, of researchers who are not having training, or who are not having background in understanding how trauma can impact us when we do research. And it's very interesting for me, this process, because we did this special issue in 2020, so basically 4 years ago. When even myself, for me, it was quite new, because I first experienced it back then in 2015, the phenomenon of vicarious trauma, secondary trauma, I mean, there is terminology that can be used. We can maybe talk about it a bit later. So of course, for me, it was firstly interesting from a very personal point of view, because I went through the whole rehabilitation phase. And once I was fit enough to just, to understand what happened to me and how it was connected to my work, I started to share this with other people. And because at this time I was in US as a Fulbright researcher, I think I was very lucky, because there people were already talking about this way more than in Europe or in Southeastern Europe, where I was mostly based at this time. So so when I started to talk with people, I realized that it's not only me, but there was some type of stigma attached to researchers, because a lot of people would respond, well, nobody asked you, to go researching such heavy topics if you are not fit to do it. And also an interesting another response, which was very, I would say, which was very gender-based, was usually that when I was talking with male fellows, there was kind of hesitancy or even resistance to saying like, well, it's not, trauma is an issue for psychologists, for traumatologists, for medical personnel, or for social workers. And we as historians or political scientists or social scientists, we are not dealing with this. So the aspect that we are interested in, it has nothing to do with us. So it was very interesting. In a bit later, I did a research with history, basically university professors that are teaching very heavy topics like genocide studies, Holocaust, I don't know, just, I would say, history that is very violent in most cases, Cold War, any history related to any conflict, to colonialism and so on. And I was investigating this understanding and acknowledgement of how, how do we bring these topics in the classrooms? How do we discuss this with students? And also, understanding that a lot of our classrooms, depending on where you live, but a lot of our classrooms today are very mixed. So we have students that are coming from very different backgrounds, a lot of students coming from backgrounds that have a violent family history. And I'm not talking about the violence in terms of domestic violence, but violence where people escaped from war or from certain political violence from these countries, resettled in Europe, in US, and so on. And so when you bring, I don't know, the topic of colonialism, I'm sorry, I apologize. The topic of colonialism, for instance, in the classroom, where people have their own personal history related to this, I think you have to be aware how to handle with this, right? So when I was doing this research with history professors, a lot of them were very surprised, me speaking about trauma related to colonialism or to genocide studies in this way of not trauma of first-hand experience, but trauma that is transmitted through narratives, through study materials, just, I don't know, showing some very graphic stuff. There is lots of teachers who would show even, I don't know, in conferences, people who would show testimonies of, survivors being violated and so on. And I would say there is still lack of acknowledgement and understanding that people can get very badly triggered. Now, if we talk about researchers, of course, we can get triggered too, because I always believe that, first of all, why we are interested in the topics that are heavy. So like in human suffering, in violence, in, I don't know, trauma in general, is probably because we have some type of personal connection, empathic connection, or I don't know, just curiosity. I don't want to say fetishism. Some people do research these things also because of fetishistic reasons. But let's say that lots of people try to understand it, just like general, I think, human curiosity, like how we can commit such horrific crimes to each other. And of course, if you get exposed to this in a longer period, I do think that most of us will feel something or will connect on empathic level. And now, obviously, there is different levels of resilience that we have, because it depends on our background. It depends. I mean, there's lots of protective factors from gender, age, work experience, and so on. But unfortunately, a lot of us start our research in very early age, right? Because we start with research, I don't know, even during our master studies, or then you just embark your PhD and bam, you know, you are thrown into heavy topics, unprepared, going to do, I don't know, oral historians, doing interviews with survivors, anthropologists, ethnographers, collecting data on the field. And yeah, as I said, still we do not have any institutional preparation. More and more people are aware of this, so that we can at least individually prepare and take care for ourselves. But on institutional level, I have to say that I'm still surprised how this is still quite new. As I said, recognition is increasing among individuals, but on the institutional level, like, there is still like no money, I think attention put into training, into preparation of researchers, which for me is very unethical, right? When we talk about ethics, we put a lot of attention how we take care of our research respondents. But if you don't take care of your researchers that are employed at your institutions, to me, it's also a huge, huge institutional and ethical issue, right? So by publishing this special issue back then in 2020 already, we realized, even because back then we organized a workshop together with a special issue, and the response was really, really huge, and I would say even surprisingly huge, because this workshop was organized on local basis in Finland, not in Helsinki, but in a smaller town. So even in this small town, we got a huge response of researchers being interested and inquiring and asking like, oh yeah, I think I am, you know, I think I'm getting impacted by my research and so on. So just this local response in Finland back there already was, I think, quite telling, right? That this is a phenomena that is touching a lot of people. So I was very happy that Routledge contacted us. And I believe that this book, even though now, like every Routledge publication, it's super expensive, but I believe that in 1 year it will become more accessible. So I really hope that more people can get this book and just get, because it's not a guide. So it's more like, as Alma already said, it's more like experiences from people. So trying to also understand what happened from very different fields. So there is there's lots of different topics and perspectives included. But I think it's already the first step, right? So just knowing that there is people who are doing similar type of research, experiencing this, and then trying to, understand what is happening with yourself is the first step. Then, of course, there are several other steps that we can do. As I said, unfortunately, most of us don't have any institutional or systematic training or prevention, I don't know, activities in these terms. But yeah, just getting also then in contact with people that went through this, that recovered even from vicarious trauma, is, I think, something that we could do with this issue. Of course, because this, for me personally, this is very interesting topic. I already developed this further, and because I'm getting also invited again and again. Just recently, I was having a training for oral historians that are dealing with historical silences, and were basically reporting the kind of same experiences. So as I said, there is, and for this reason, I'm also going now beyond this issue, trying to maybe figure out or design a model or technique, what are the steps that we can take as preventive measure, and if we are already impacted, what are some of them? I don't want to say self-care techniques, because self-care has a very new age connotation, but in fact it is, because, as I said, institutions are not caring for us yet. So I think we are still on the stage trying to help each other, how to guide and how to find ways how to basically get well or recover when we already get impacted by research. I will stop here. I think I throw in a lot of things. Maybe Alma, you can help me with questions to be more focused.
Thank you very much. This was very informative, both about the volume and about your personal experiences of this. I can tell from my own perspective, for instance, when I was doing my PhD research, I was exploring the memories and bias in memories for in-group wrongdoing. So that actually put me in a position of researcher conducting 240 interviews with survivors of 92-95 war in Bosnia. What I wrote in this volume was also about finding a parallel between their experience of war and my experience of war, which was like going back in the past, because during the war I was between 8 and 12, so meaning I was a child in elementary school, and somehow my understanding of war was okay, it was something terrible. I saw also plenty of stuff in media, as much as it was possible, because we didn't really have electricity, food, and water at the time. But later on, when I was reading it, and the older I get, I actually started to understand um, how dangerous it was also for me. Although at that moment I knew that it was hard, but I couldn't understand like why I couldn't play outside as the other children and so on. So while listening to their stories, I was somehow trying to find a parallel between the adult experience of war and my like child experience of war. Because even now when I talk about it, although I am like 40 years old, it is still like child talking about the war. So I know that you also developed some of these techniques that are based on drama and theater that can help you like deal with those emotions. And could you tell us a bit more about it? Because like at the moment I'm doing like similar research again, but at one institution which is very rich and based in the global north. But I realized that professors here they would like to help, but they simply don't know about it. And somehow, it is interesting if you are based in the country that is like rich and safe. You somehow think that even meeting someone who has war experience is somehow something surreal. So it's like even that fact is huge to them. And then even my stories like are even beyond that. So it's even hard for them to follow up of what exactly I've been going through at this point while doing this research, let alone what I went through during my first research. So is there anything that you would suggest to also those professors who are like somehow detached from these realities that we went through? What exactly they can do to support their postdocs, students, or PhD students, or MA students?
Thank you, Alma. I will try to stick to the issue, because as I said, I developed many things after this because it's an interesting and I think very important even methodological aspects, for everyone who is researching in this field. And when it comes to technique, I have a very disappointing answer, because I did, as you said, I tried to develop some approaches and some ways how to protect yourself, how to be prepared to go on the field. But there is so many different factors like that every individual has, that I think what is the most, still I believe that what is the most important thing so far from the experience that I had, from the trainings that I delivered, I just also published a paper where I was testing some methods, like if they worked, people that were going through the preparation training, and then the control group of people that were just, doing research without knowing that they can get impacted and so on. But of course, it's very hard because we work with human beings in very different contexts. Like, as you said, for instance, you have your own personal experience with war, right? So your research position is very different from mine, because I was also researching people that experience war and war crimes and war violence, but I had absolutely no personal experience, and not even personal experience of sexual violence in general, fortunately. But this was my topic, and it's interesting because this anyway really, really impacted me. And I totally, I basically projected the experiences of survivors to my own private and intimate life at one moment, which was a very interesting aspect of how vicarious trauma worked with me. But what I want to say is that you don't need to have a personal experience to feel this impact. And also because I think that the most challenging issue is already to recognize that you get impacted, because lots of people feel that they are more resilient as they are just because we don't recognize symptoms, right? Even, for instance, when I'm delivering trainings on like what are the symptoms, what is vicarious trauma, what is burnout, what is the difference between, I don't know, emotional fatigue, burnout, vicarious trauma, and so on. Mostly people would think of symptoms like, oh, I get depressed, I lose hope, I don't know, I'm frustrated, I feel powerless, and so on, which all are symptoms. Just briefly to summarize it, very often they are very similar to regular PTSD or to first-hand experience trauma symptoms. But in a lot of cases, for instance, my own case was that I was very hysterical. I mean, I was having a lecture and talking about these horrific crimes that happened during 90s and the war in, after the breakup of Yugoslavia, and I was like laughing, you know, cynically. I was really, really cynical, and only once, I remember it was in Canada, one of the students came to me and he was like, wow, this lecture was so heavy, but why were you laughing? You know, why were you? And I realized it was my cynical response basically to the heaviness of topic. And also, I mean, I was there in front of the you know, in the classroom of 40 young 20 years old people that were in Canada that have never experienced something like this. Not, I mean, at least not firsthand. And, you know, they had these big open eyes, as you said, in this very peaceful country, quasi multi-culti, well managed. And then you come with all these stories, you know, that felt like, as you said, super, super surreal. And because I saw how they were reacting, I also tried to kind of diminish the heaviness of these stories. And I was making these stupid, not funny jokes. And when I started to analyze this, I was like, wow, it's in fact because I have my own issues to deal with this, right? Because it's so heavy, I don't know where to even position myself in the context of these stories. So asking about technique, I would like to give answers, and this is always because I even feel that lately I was called a few times, you know, like when the war in Ukraine started, I remember I got one invitation. And they immediately wanted to have like really fast preparation of the first respondents, so people that were not researchers but that were going as humanitarian workers, like how to deal, you know, with the potential rape survivors that are coming from Ukraine and so on. And I was like, I really can't give you, you know, the technique that would work just like this, because again, it's a new context, you know. Okay, we can have some similarities with other conflicts, but it's so new and fresh, and people, of course, are denying. I don't know, in Bosnia, it took 10 years for people to speak up. We cannot just force them. So I would like to have a technique. And as I said, I was doing these control groups and trying to test certain things, how we can get prepared. As I said, I think awareness is really, really a big deal. So for people to know that it can happen, and to people to self-inspect and to self-assess their own protective factors, risk factors, and so on. So we can do some of this, I would say, self-analysis. And then, of course, if you have peer support, it's a big thing. For me also, I'm always emphasizing that institutional support is very important, you know, because we are not, when we do this work, we don't burn out just because of the content, because of the heaviness of what we do, but also because of the general pressure of academic careers. You know, you have to publish 3 books and 20 articles in 1 year, and to apply for 3,000 grants. And then you also have to go in the middle of the war, you know, to do this interviews and this, and come back, and then bam, immediately to your office. So it's also this general, I think, stress and pressure of everyday life. So when we talk about burnout and risk reduction, it's also like, okay, you need to find work-life balance, and you know, it's very, very complex. One thing that I think is important and is very, very hard for lots of people to do it. I did it because I burned out so much that I had to do it, otherwise I would not be able to keep to work anymore, is that you need to change your lifestyle. You know, you need to incorporate this, I'm sorry to call it like this, self-care practices into everyday life. Because just, I don't know, going to yoga once per month when you are already burned out, you know, it will not work. Or the bubble bath therapist, you know, it's really, and because when I'm having trainings that people come multiple times and I can also monitor the process, like you need to do your homework, because you cannot come to my training and I will give you because I propose like thousands of activities and thousands of techniques if you want, what to do to protect yourself, but also to help yourself when you are already affected. But it's a work, it's an investment that we have to do. So and it happens, as I said, now I try to design this model. It happens on multiple layers. So of course, individually, then institutionally, which I hope that we can put pressure on our institutions to work better with researchers. And maybe going just back to this issue, why I think it's also very nice, because it's not a guide, is that you can see, I think we have really nice collection of very, very different cases and experiences, because when you read these cases and when you look at this, you see how individual the approach to prevent this and to work with it is. Also because, as I said, because the level of resilience is way different, right? So I can again say, just from the 2020, when we were editing the first special issue and now to the second book, it's been 4 years, and I could see the things that I was writing back then in the introduction and explaining my own experiences, how I experienced the secondary trauma. I see that now when I was doing my field research last year and I went again into the middle of refugee camps and saw this misery again, but just my resilience was different, because I learned things. Of course, I already burnt out before this, recover a little bit, but I knew that I'm going to do this work. I knew that I had to rest. I knew that I had to make a break. I even knew how to schedule my field work in different way, which are all the things I didn't know already back then in 20s, in 2020 when we were publishing this first issue. So I would say that for technique, there is not one answer. And I think this is also why this issue is interesting, because you see that you have very different fields where people are working from, you could maybe even put them from like on the ladder of exposure. And I'm sure that for some researchers, some people would say like, wow, you're not even exposed, in comparison to how much I get exposed. I remember that when we did the first time the issue, one of the researchers came to me during the workshop, and he's in environmental studies, and he came to me and he said, hey, I really want to write about my experience. And I was like, okay, what's your domain? And he said, I'm in future studies, and I was like, yeah, no, we are working more with past, and violence that's going on now. And he was like, no, you know what? Me knowing what is going to happen in 20 years, I cannot do this. I'm so anxious. I'm so stressed. I cannot sleep. I have insomnia. And we started to talk, and it just occurred to me, wow, the world is so heavy that basically even the topics that you assume are not so heavy can impact you. There was another example where, when a professor from Poland was explaining to me that when he was giving the example of a Christmas, of Christmas holidays and gifting and so on, that one of the students was super triggered because during the communism they had a very heavy family personal story that happened when the religion was forbidden and they could not, and then they were punished and so on. So you see, you give your students nice homework about gifting during Christmas, and you have a person that is triggered because of the family story. So this is why I think why this issue is also interesting, because it goes into future, present, and past in very different contexts, and covering very different topics, also very different, I would say, methodologies, so levels of exposure. So again, sorry, Alman, there's no answer to technique. I think there is multiple. And I really believe that sharing is also one of the great things, people just really sharing the experiences that they have, how they feel, they get impacted by this research, and also the resilience practices, because I think there is multiple ways how people recover. And I don't know, lots of people would do yoga and meditation and in fact realize that it's really not what works for them, that they need to go, I don't know, for a rave, entire weekend, and basically it's what works for you. So this is also why I think it's more important to debate and give a space for us to share the experiences and to understand what is happening with us, also the context that we live in, and then trying to make this more or less individual plan for prevention, but also for rehabilitation in case that you already, realize that you have symptoms and that you are suffering from this.
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, you said that there is no like one response, but of course, like you provided like so many different techniques and methods that can be used. I can tell that in my case, actually, what helps me is talking to my colleagues who are coming from a similar background, let's say, and who went through similar like experiences, and then we somehow like recollect the past events and talk about them in a way that, as you said, that sometimes we even laugh because in certain cases, like also humor is like let's say the normal reaction to abnormal situation.
Absolutely,
Because yeah, in that case. What I also wanted to point out here is that if you are really going through something like that and you think that it is impacting both your life and your research and to the certain extent your career, I think it's never problematic to stop and reflect on it, and then to find like a safe group of people or maybe one person to whom you can speak about that. And I think that everyone should be very vocal about it and also inform their supervisors or like bosses or depending on the environment you are working at what you are going through, and tell them that if they cannot provide any sort of assistance that you are going to find it elsewhere, but also you don't want your work to suffer and you don't want them to think that you're basically just lazy and you don't want to do the work, but it is actually something that you have been going through during that period. And just one thing that is unrelated but also related to this, we had this short conversation in chat. Gervana asked whether there are some articles that can be read free of charge, and I promised to send her articles related to the special issue. And also, Nena, if you have some articles on this topic that you are like willing to share, Gervana left her email address here in the chat. That is also very important for me as a scholar from the global south who actually studied with on the scarce resources and have to try like all different sources and means to find articles and books and to read them for free or for a very little fee. So I understand how this kindness of researchers from the global north is actually very important. So just for those of you who didn't go through this, like please respond to such messages and always send articles or provide materials that you can like whenever it's possible.
Yeah, this is also, I would like to, that's what I said about Routledge, that I think Routledge is interesting publisher because they have great marketing strategy and they spread their books around libraries, but at the same time, the price is inaccessible for most of the people and it's not open access, but I cannot really, promote this, I think publicly here, but I would say like, send us emails, we have ways how we share our research. And as I said, yeah, definitely I have, because I think for me, it's also really important to share this knowledge and to, as you also mentioned a bit, Alma, because support groups are very underrated. But the thing is that I think we are still quite in the level of shame and stigma attached to this. I would also say that it really depends where you are, because I see that some departments, some institutions are more open to this, like for instance, I would say anthropologists or gender studies are way more into understanding the impact and also, questioning our own emotional involvement, our own positionality in the research that we do. Whereas you have some more, traditional, even conservative departments or institutions, and this I experience a lot, for instance, in history departments where there is really no, because I'm very, very loud there and advocating for, understanding in general the impact of collective traumas in Europe, to the violence that is currently going on, and also how we teach about this in classrooms, how we deal with this. And as I said, I have to say that in some departments there is resistance, and understanding of trauma really in a very, very clinical and medical terms, which to a certain degree I think is very important. But also trauma, as we, when we deal with trauma that is a consequence of like political collective events, like, I don't know, war or any type of political violence, I think it's way more than just therapeutic issue, and this is when it comes also to the vicarious trauma, because the thing why we also feel this, it's not like that we get just depressed because we empathize with individual destiny of these people. Very often we get depressed or we lose hope and power because we also understand the political context behind, right? So for instance, you are engaged with survivors and see how they are doing, and you see that, I don't know, concretely in my case, 30 years after, they still live in a very miserable social context, and that society is not supportive at all, that there is still, that they are on the margin of the society. So of course, these more social and political factors that impact you, and because you then try to also engage as an advocate, as an activist, and this also contributes to your general burnout and emotional fatigue, right? So here, this is why I would like to emphasize that we need to stop understanding trauma just something that happens, in our brain or our heart, and we need to go to therapists and they'll tell, oh, I cannot sleep or I'm depressed, and then, therapists will give us a magic formula and we will just continue. I think the role of therapists is very important, again, not for everyone, and it's also very, very Western. For a lot of people, when you mentioned like researchers for Global South, generally for many people, therapists are still not accessible, right? So because of this, I think we also, unfortunately, we always have to think like how we can help each other on community level. And I think what you said about peer-to-peer support, it's really, I mean, as I said before, it's very, very underrated. So in a lot of the workshops, for instance, most of the time what we were doing was just sharing the stories, sharing the experience and offering this support to each other, feeling that, okay, I'm not alone, I'm not strong enough because, I broke down of the pain that I felt. And then also people sharing, because we are also in different stages, right? For me now, I think I quite recovered. Still, I think it's a lifelong process, to deal with this in your life. But still, I feel way stronger now than I was, I don't know, in 2015, to listen to people and also to share my own resilience and my own ways how I prevent to get to burn out again or to protect myself. So yeah, just this sharing thing, and this usually, can be organized without any means, because as I said, I want to promote this community support and peer-to-peer, but I also know that it's very dangerous, because with this we can also make our institutions sleep and not react. So we should be pressing the institutions to incorporate this, to invest money into this, to make it systematic, because again, as I said, also the biggest problem is to incorporate this into our life, right? Because we, for instance, in the trainings that I deliver, we try to make a plan, like a short-term and long-term. So what will you do next week to prepare yourself for the field research? And, when we start to book the time, it's of course, it's always a problem, because, I have kids to feed, I have husband to pamper, I have this and this, and there's no place for your own whatever activity you will do to be better prepared, and this is the start, right? And when I'm emphasizing this institutional involvement, when you have this part of your professional training, for instance, at least in PhD studies, as we get I don't know, this ethic commission or ethic review training, how to do ethical research, I really think this should be a part of it. And now, again, not to be unfair, these things are already happening, again, mostly in the West. So it is changing, but again, it doesn't hurt, to emphasize that, yeah, institutions should because you work with this institution, so it's part of your job to go to the field and to collect this data. So they will also have direct profit from this. You are, again, I'm very, very romantic here because there's many things to change with our institutions, but at the same time, yes, we need to, I think it should be seen as an important part, especially with PhD students, because also the most horrifying thing for me is that with the PhD students that I get in contact, like you have people going to insane context, very dangerous, very violent, like 22 years, 25 years, 26 years old. As you said, Alma, also from the safe environment, you have no personal connection, and have no personal traumas related to this. So it's very new to you, maybe very exciting, to go to the front line to Ukraine. And then you see these crazy things there, and it will hit you forever, because you will, this is one of the risk factors. So I don't know, it should be also role of supervisors to when you see the proposal of your students, to maybe assess together with your student, like, is this person ready to get exposed to this, or should I go with this person, or how should I accompany this person? So yes, and this could be done, I am now in the ethics review commission. So when you see you get a proposal for research, you put in ethics, so how you will take care for yourself, so in ethic commissions could do this quite easily, it's also not a revolution to do it.
Yeah, thank you so much. We opened up so many topics here, actually, and we can talk about this endlessly. I remember also yesterday at one of the department meetings, we were discussing something like how we are now impacted a lot by whatever is happening in the world, because all of that is also happening on our iPhones. So it is like I keep seeing children under the rubble, and basically, I remember when I was a child, I didn't understand what it meant that during bombarding we have to go to the shelter, because otherwise we can end up under the rubble. So this is now like a reminder of what could have happened. Fortunately, it didn't happen to me, but it is actually impacting me. So how much also Ukraine and Gaza and Palestine, previously Syria, then Sudan, Congo are impacting us now, because although it's happening somewhere else, it is basically right there on our phones.
Yeah. And if not just this, I think it's a very good point. I actually wanted to refer, because you mentioned this before. Yeah, that now, unfortunately, these atrocities are so visible in our everyday life that we should all have a training, how to prevent ourselves, because it impacts us. And as you said, Alma, also, it doesn't. Ukraine was closer to us. What is happening now in Palestine it's a bit further, so it's easier for people in Europe to still say, like, okay, we were following for 2 months, now it's done, and we switch off. But even if you work in, as I said before, if you're a teacher, if you work in the classroom, every time happens to me that you have not just people who have a refugee background, but people who arrived recently, and speaking about these things, we have to think like that we have these people in classrooms. So what we will, and the most dangerous thing is that I see this with my students very often, that they do not react. When you speak to these things, I'm super, super cautious. But I also started to recognize and learn, how people react differently. And then always you have at least one person who comes after the class and sharing this experience. So for me, it's also important to know, as a working professional, whenever you talk about these topics, either you are, I don't know, teacher, scholar, you have a public talk, it's something that goes on YouTube, whatsoever. Okay, sometimes audience can choose what they will consume, see, and watch. But if you have a person that is studying, I don't know, in my case, it was digital storytelling, nothing to do with war, and then I want to show something from my experience, I don't know, working with refugees, I have to be aware that what they will see on the screen might be a story of some people, which was the case, So I think it's learning how to deal with this is not important anymore just for researchers, but really, I think also for anyone who gets in contact with working with people, being a teacher, I don't know, just having a lecture on this thing. So yeah, this sensitivity, of course, also not going now to to the other side and to victimize everything, because I think it is happening, and it's a bit dangerous that we are also a bit victim culture. to a certain degree. But yeah, I think this sensitivity still is, there is a lot to do, you know, to just understand how we use language and how we present these things in the classroom. As I said before, history is a big topic, you know. How do we speak about history, not to trigger, as you said, like you have people that are now, you know, young adults from the recent wars in Balkans, and listening these things. So how do you speak about these things in the classroom where you have people coming from different communities, you know, not to trigger, and to leave them in a good space when they go home, not to also steer the communities even further, you know.
That's exactly what is part of my current research, is actually how they teach history in Bosnia and Serbia, what they learn from it, and what they basically learn from other sources, and how that influences their intergroup relations, which is really interesting because in most of the cases realize that they don't know the basic facts of the history. However, they have some opinions about the other group, which they express in this or the other way.
Yeah.
I think now we have like 10 minutes left for your questions. Are there any questions, comments, suggestions from from the audience here? So you are free to put it in the chat, or like just speak up and let us know what you think about it.
I saw some hands in the middle of when we had talks. So you can also comment, or if you have your own experiences. I think now we have this peer-to-peer group. It would be good to share. You know, if you have your own experiences of yeah, being exposed, or
Yeah, I think Milica raised hand. So
yes. Hi, Alma. Thanks for this, and hi, Nena. Nice to see you. I really want to thank you both, actually, for this training, because I had in my mind to write to you, Nena, about the topic precisely. And then I just saw that there is this lovely opportunity happening. So this is really great. And I mean, at this point, I was just thinking, really, I think that you both kind of covered a lot of important issues, and Nena and me, we kind of share also the experience of PhD at University of Ljubljana, and the lack maybe of institutional preparedness. But I was doing it also at Sciences Po, and even there, this is still not really a part of the discussion. And I was especially thankful to you for discussing issues on how even sometimes the non very obvious topics can cause these kind of processes, because I was working on Yugo nostalgia and how certain generation of the last pioneers remembers the Yugoslav socialist state and how they define their political identity. But I was doing it through the methodology of life narration and grounded theory, and I would have people actually tell them their life stories. And besides myself also going through my own personal process, being the generation of the last pioneers and a Yugoslav, of course, very much triggered by my presence in the field for 2 years. It was actually a very difficult situation for me, because I would often have the situation where my interviewees would go through the process of triggering or re-traumatizing themselves throughout the interview, sometimes in relation to the war, sometimes because these are the life narratives in relation to very personal family issues, some harassment, violence even, or they would simply start crying in the middle of the interview. And I remember that I was really for a very long time very upset, because nobody prepared me for this, and nobody was there at the institutional level to actually give me access to any kind of tools, not only how to regulate myself, but also how to regulate the interviewees. And it, whenever it was, sometimes I did raise the issue, it was said, but you're working on Yugo nostalgia. I mean, come on, what kind of traumatization and triggering could there be? So I think that there is this whole area of exposing not only the researcher's re-traumatization, but also what happens in this common space between the researcher and the interviewee, because I do believe that we are co-creating knowledge, and I think this is actually really the place where a lot of emotional actions and reactions are going on. this is something that we should be thinking more of how to institutionalize it, like you were saying, because I think that it's completely still out of the focus. But then on the other side, there is another structural issue of the unemployed, in between gigs, early career researchers who don't have an institution, and however today are expected to continue researching and writing and preparing the project proposals. But the project proposals today demand that you already have done at least a year of research, and have some pilot interviews, and like all of these things which you're doing completely outside of any institutional context, without any financial means. So there is also really this whole new cohort of researchers that we need to be thinking about. I think that how to deal with this, and then of course being a political scientist and having taught some of the courses in political sciences like ethics and war. I mean, definitely there is a whole issue of this, how the current political situations and actualities are being reflected in the classrooms as well. But yeah, probably I can continue. This may be too much of a personal sharing on my reflections, but I really just wanted to say thank you so much. But a practical question would be how to attend the training and how we can recommend and who to call. So I think that this would be a very useful resource for many researchers here and our colleagues. Thanks.
Alma, is it up to me?
Yes, Nena, I think you
okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Milica, for sharing. As I said, we have a space to share, so share your personal stories here, because we don't often have this opportunity. And also, I think your example is really great, that basically, yeah, nostalgia is something that most of people would connect with, something fun and good and positive memories, as opposed to trauma, as such. But it is also very traumatic. It can be a very traumatic issue for a lot of things. And as you said, this is the thing that you go totally, happy to do your research, and you're totally unprepared when people will react on something that you would never even connect, that it will be triggering. And one good point that you made, which I think is maybe not connected directly to us as researchers, but it can also impact us, how we feel about doing this very research, is that when you go and do, I don't know, let's say when you conduct interviews and you see the person in front of you reacting, right? Crying, screaming, I don't know, being triggered. And of course, this is a huge issue because we are also not trained how to react on this, because this is a whole set of, for instance, in my case, at one point, I went back to study and did some education in psychology, because I realized that I needed skills and competences to deal with the people that I was working as researcher with, to react on this, So I think it's a very, very important skill. And when I had this workshop with oral historians, this question was reappearing all the time, like, wow, I talked to this person and I kind of assumed that this person might not feel well. And then in fact, this person was crying. We had this talk 2 hours, and then, I just left and I was like, oh, okay, what do I do now? And then, some people went back and called their interviewers back. So I think you usually then try to make this personal connection, and kind of like, when Alma, you mentioned my methods with theater, my main idea why I was using this theater was because I had to find closure, because I also felt it's very unethical. I'm doing my career, I'm publishing books, and these people are still in the same miserable situation that I met them, So of course, then again, you have all these questions about your positionality and I think the very question of your role as researchers, because before, with understanding human sciences in this very positive manner, it was easy, you need objective knowledge, you need objective data. So you go there as a robot, you ask questions, you leave, and then you don't care, But of course, we want to make the science better today. And we want to, I think we are now approaching all this question about emotions, also Milica, because you have an experience in the French, science and scholarship. I think that they already did a very great contribution, at least anthropologists, in including a lot of this emotional aspect into writing. And this is something, for instance, that when you are doing, I think psychology is still very rigid. When you are preparing your article, there is no place to also write a paragraph like, oh, you know, I was totally broken after this and I couldn't write anything 3 months, you know, because I didn't know what to do with myself. And it's a serious issue. You know, you really are blocked, you really feel in between. And then some people, in my case, for instance, I became half a social worker because I felt I need to give something back, you know. So, and we still in academic place, again, I said there is disciplines that are more open to this, but I don't know, a very traditional political science or psychology is still very much data-based and very objective science, you know, where you don't have space. And it's also quite gendered, because I had these issues that I was approached in political science conferences like, oh, why are you crying here? You know, we want to do science. And I mean, I don't know. I think it was way more valuable when I also brought the emotions and my own understanding and positionality and what I felt when I opened somebody and left them in this situation, you know, because in my case, for instance, women were very direct to me and they told me directly, pay us, you know, or what will we get for this, you know? And I think it's a fair question, you know, and we don't even tend to ask, because usually we are not even paid for our work, let alone having money to pay people with whom we work, you know. And this also goes to another set of questions that, Melissa, you open, with precarious situation, with doing academic work outside of our institution, moving every 2 years to new institution and so on. And this is why I also said that our work is not demanding just because we research content that might be triggering. And as you said, also, it might trigger also your own personal history, family histories, right? But also because the very context of academia today is very hostile, right? So just this is already draining, let alone then to think that you have, because honestly, I feel that doing an extensive field research today is not even possible, you know, because you are so busy with stuff, and to take this right to go on the field, to really understand communities that you're working in different situations, in different contexts, meeting the more broader context, not just the person as such, it's almost impossible, because we are so we have so many things to do, and we are so attached to the institutional vision of what we should produce, rather, you know, the quality and the really going into depth what we are doing. And then the practical question about the training. So because of course I think we are both, I don't know if there is anyone who went through this training, or you have it at your institution, or you had it as a PhD student, please raise the hand. I will be happily look into this, all these hands here, but I don't think there's any. No, there's no hands. So as I said, I am really trying my best to bring this. One thing what we tried to do now was we were applying with New Horizon project, where we put one methodological section where we will try to offer kind of pilot training. And of course it's limited, but at least, I don't know if this is accepted, it's a start. But because I saw that there was a huge also feedback of other institutions who are partners in this project, I was thinking even broader, that maybe the entire Horizon project could be focused just on this, or any other, because you have other European projects that are supporting training, or mostly training of higher institution personnel. So I think something like this could be a start, so you can invite and disseminate also with multiple institutions, because going institution per institution, the problem is of course also money and the financial strategies that they have. So far what I have done as individual is that when people got a project, I did a training so for the very specific project. But when it comes to because I don't know if you are all here Europe based, or because in Europe at least I think we have projects, European projects, where we can apply for this, and we can offer this in I would say pan-national level. For US or for, I don't know, for Japan, for any other, you have maybe other strategies how you could find because it's not just you know, so far all the trainings that I've done were for free, so I never charged any fee, because there was never opportunity to basically have this training. But I find it important, so I did this for this. But of course, because the problem is not just to pay the trainer, the problem is also to pay people to come, because again, this could be, we did two trainings online during 2020 and 21. So I think it could be done partially online. You don't need to be in person. But I also think that because these things are very personal and very emotional, the fact that people get together and are physically in one room has additional value. So I would still try to search for opportunities when people can do this in person. But in the worst case, I do think that maybe do a little research if you are part of institution at your ethic commission department, because this is, I think, where it should start. But now if they will do it or not, as I said, I think all this concept of trauma-informed, teaching, research, whatever, is getting also now in Europe. So it's getting more and more popular. So I do think that it is coming, and this is also, for me, it was very interesting to see this issue being published in 2020 and now republished in 24, because I was rereading some stuff and particular things that I was writing, I saw like, oh wow, so there was progress done, so this was quite a happy thing for me to see that, at least I think on the level of awareness, because in 2020 people didn't even know. Now I see that people at least are, mostly on the basis of this issue, reaching out and asking, like, where can I get knowledge, where can I get training, and so on. So I think that awareness is increasing on this, and it's a first step. And then the other, also maybe a practical question to this, as I said, I was doing this pilot kind of study, trying to test some of the methods and techniques, how the training would even look, because the biggest question is also, what do you include in the training, right? Most of the times now I had training that was 2 days maximum long, and of course you can do some stuff, but not much. It's very, very limited. So in this and it's also, I think, question related to the chat, because one person asked if we can share articles, because this paper is now in peer review, and in this paper I provided a model that you as an individual can use in a way to understand, like, in which levels you can prepare yourself, to whom you can reach out, what are the things that you need to pay attention to. And also there is some summary basically of, I think it was 17 researchers that I was piloting this with, so that they were providing some feedback, like what was the experience once they did certain take some certain measurements in comparison to research that they've done before without any preparation. And I just think, like, also what you said, Milica, the biggest issue I think is to really put attention to train PhD researchers, because I see from my experience as well now, and I did everything on my own because there was no institutional training for this. I see it really helps, if you prepare yourself, it really helps. How much easier for me now it is, and that I still feel that I because now I really feel, okay, I'm on the edge on burnout, I need to stop, because before I didn't, these were the basic things that you just, one day you just don't wake up, so yeah, I really think PhD researchers, because also when you've never done serious research, PhD is trauma as such, for most of people, and then going to this. So really, and this, I think we have maybe more chances to convince departments to do it, so to make it as a part of PhD training. And for us, I think most of us here, because I think perhaps most of us here are already like seniors or experienced researchers, we need recovery, not anymore prevention. It's done. we are lost already. So
I agree totally. So we have time for one more question. Nena wants to ask something.
Yep. Okay.
Just unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello. Okay. Hi. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for having this conversation. It's really super helpful. I cannot say that, like, I did gather that this is what's happening to me, and I've been starting to do some stuff that help, but it's absolutely refreshing to hear that there are people working on this, that this is taken seriously, that you are working towards this. So very briefly, my background is in racism and discrimination research, and I am also a Bosnian, and I am also visibly a Muslim woman, and I am also working as an activist, or I used to work as an activist, not only researching but also like working with people. So, I mean, I agree with everything you said, and I have lots of experience of burnout and not understanding what's happening to me and losing it or not being clear with like what's happening, or doing too much of one particular problem and then seeing everything as that problem, and lots of these things that were mentioned. I just wanted briefly to mention, just to add as a comment, one thing which also I feel was very difficult for me, which is like lack of understanding of like your immediate family or your immediate friends of what's going on with you. Like, it's not only there is an lack of institutional support, or that you yourself don't understand what's really going on, but also like trying to talk to people around you who will either gaslit you or will not understand what's going on, or will think that this is just too much fuss. Like, yeah, what's the big issue with you, like talking every day with another victimized person? Like, how could this be a problem? So I know you all know this already, but just to add a small bit to this uh, already complex conversation. Thank you very much for organizing this.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Germana, for joining us, and thank you for that comment. I think Nena I can also relate to it.
Yeah, I can just say, yeah, I think it's a great comment, because it's most of us have this case, right? It's you can be really lucky if you have a person that, because also, I mean, in most cases, you don't have a partner who would be also doing the same type of research and so on, which sometimes I think is very good, because I see in my own case, because my husband is mathematician, and this really helps, because I come home and we don't talk about refugees and trauma, and we also don't talk about math, but it gives me a space, But when you have person at home that is, I don't know, in the same sector or also activist and so on, this is ongoing conversation, right? And with ongoing conversation, it means that you have no space to clean your head, to recharge, to get out of this topic and so on. Now, when it comes to understanding, I think this is also why myself in this model, I really emphasize when it comes to individuals, so not in institutional support, to find peer support. So people, like for instance, today we have a circle, and we heard already few testimonies, few stories that everyone, I mean, from people who are going through the same or similar experience. So this is one thing, that if you have a chance to get surrounded by people that understand you, because I think what was already said, the biggest problem is that in most time when people don't understand why this is serious, and you are not just researcher, you also consume this, is that people will tell you like, why do you then even do this? Then just stop it. And I had this continuously from my own family, because they saw how I was burnt out, and my mom was still, I'm sorry, mom, if you will see this, but it's the fact, that she was just telling me, why do you have to do this? You will also not change anything. You see, it's nonsense what you are doing. And of course, there is, and I mean, you can also understand people were not in this, and they also, I think most people do understand that it's a heavy issue, and they respond with silence or not even want to go into this. So just if this is helpful to know that, yeah, expecting support from families, of course it's hard, because people do not understand, they are in different field, and also because sometimes people don't want that we bring these issues home, right? Because these issues are heavy. And again, I wrote in the introduction of this special issue. So basically, when I had this first burnout in 2015, because it was really the moment when I had, even I would say when I was diagnosed by secondary trauma, the question of sexual violence that I've been researching every day impacted my own intimate life to the degree that I could not anymore have the normal intercourse with my partner, and eventually then ended up in breakup and so on. Of course, it was complex, not just this, but it was a big part of it, because I was bringing this home and not necessarily sharing and not getting the feedback from my partner, but because it was impacting me so much that I saw my ex-partner as a direct threat, because he was a man, and men are like this. And I think this is super, super toxic and super wrong, right? You have to understand that, no, it's your work, it's your research. And again, social workers, psychologists, I don't know, Alma, if you have this experience. So people that are first responders, there is way more training in this and way more understanding that, yes, this is our work and it's dangerous to bring this work at home. So in this way, I would even say that thanks gosh if your family doesn't understand you, because maybe it helps you to go out and reach out to people that, you know, share this work and not bring in this work at home. Because I would also really encourage to find ways to, you know, to leave it out of your home, to have your home as a safe space where you can recharge when you have this positive energy. Because I do think that, you know, if you bring these things home, these things then start to be around you, and yeah, you don't have a space where to escape, you know, and where you to get the energy that's not intoxicated by this. But it is a real case, yeah, that most of us have families and partners who don't understand. And I would even say that it's hard to expect from people, right? Because it's a very particular thing. We also, I mean, if you've never been exposed to this, it's, of course, it's hard to understand how much it impacts you, right?
Yes, I agree totally. And when you mentioned the psychologists and how they react, I think the problem here is that when you are a psychologist and a researcher and you have a grant for your research, which is like very time sensitive, you know, what they expect from you are data, not like your own traumas and how you are like what you have been experiencing about getting those data. So I think that in that sense, we actually, all of us need to learn how to somehow pause and like reflect. And basically, if people around you, be those your supervisors or whoever, don't understand you, find another like a supporting group, and then like learn how to deal with them, like their lack of understanding, whether by trying to convince them, whether showing them this video, whether it's like I don't know, like it's also, I would say, ethics issue. So, like, pushing you into something that is hard on you is also like a breach of ethics, I would say. So, like, also reminding them of that is never a bad thing.
Yeah. Just one thing to add, because of course there's so many aspects to this, is also that the issue is very often as well, you know, that maybe more in when you are in social work or in humanitarian work, for instance, than as researcher, because talking about institutions and understandings that is coming from institutions, because they would often feel like, you know, when you try to tell what happened to you or what is happening, and I heard this myself, is like, oh, so basically you write about survivors, but you know, you are just another white Western European woman speaking about your, you know, sweet problems, instead of putting in focus the woman that you were doing research with and the real problems, you know. So because especially if we are based in the West, we also deal with this, that it's again our own, you know, privileged trauma, if you want, that we are putting in front, instead of really putting in the focus people that are living the real trauma, you know. So making this thing between the real first-hand experience trauma and your trauma, because it's true, you know, when I work with refugees, they stay there in the forest in horrible conditions, and I come back, you know, to Paris, to my safe home, and go to theater in the evening. So it's totally true. But does it mean that now I should not say that during this theater performance I was still thinking about what I've seen in the forest? You know, I don't know. I think there is space also for this, because if I burn out, if I don't know, in 5 years I will not be capable to do this work anymore. So if it's not sustainable, there we need advocates, we need, as we heard, a lot of people are also activists. So you will stop doing this work. And this happened to me at one point. I gave up because I was so burned out, nothing really happened. I had no support, and I was like, you know what, I need to leave as well. So I'm leaving the field, you know. And this is why I think it's important to talk about our sustainability, because also sometimes the people that we are doing research with that are very marginalized and in very deprivileged positions, even if the best thing is that they would be speaking on behalf of themselves and doing research on behalf of themselves, sometimes this is not possible because they are in such precarious positions, because they are in danger, because they are stateless, because they don't know where they will be tomorrow. So I still think, okay, why not to use the privilege that I can speak about this, that I can write about this, than just, you know, observing and witnessing, like what we also can do right now with, you know, with the wars going on and so on. So Of course, I prefer that people speak on their behalf about their experiences, but in some cases, it's simply not possible. And maybe you have a better or bigger reach than these people have. So, you know, and because you will be hearing and witnessing these stories, you will also get impacted because you also realize, wow, I live in the world where some people are experiencing this. And I'm so lucky that I don't experience this, you know. So this is also a question that it's kind of like, oh, we should not address it because it's my, you know, privilege, you know, victimization. But no, I mean, it is also a legitimate question, you know, because we do share the world and it does impact us if some people are living in miserable conditions, and because we were just lucky, right? Nothing else. I mean, that it's just really luck that I'm here and I'm not in the forest. So
yeah, those are also some of the tough things that we have to take into consideration, whether it is impacting you just as a researcher who never went through such a horror of life, or basically it is like reminding you of the horrors that you went through, whether you were like aware of them or not that much, depending on your age at that time. Are there any like more comments, suggestions, or questions, or we can like close the session? Okay, so then thank you all very much. This was very interactive and even more than I actually expected. And I'm really grateful to all of you, especially to those of you who raised the questions, to those of you who woke up very early just for this. I just hope that you don't feel traumatized after this and that you will find a way to get some refreshment after this session and start your day or continue your day depending where you are. If you are watching this like on YouTube, I hope that you will get some clarification and insights from the field. And if you like have any sort of additional questions or comments, I'm quite sure that Nena will be ready to respond by email if you contact her. Those of you who left your emails here, I will be reaching out to you and I will send you some of the materials that I have. So special thanks to Nena for time to share this research with us. It was really great and informative to me as well, although I was like privileged enough to be part of this special issue first and then Routledge volume. I hope to see you again at some of our seminars, and I hope that there will be opportunities for us to work together again. Thanks to the Division 48 and Abrir for supporting this event, and I truly hope to see you all soon, next month or maybe like in the future very soon. So goodbye, and I'll stop recording now.
Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bon courage.